Welcome to Waiting on the Trade, a comics book club for people who can't keep up with monthly comics. I'm Matt Ledger.
I'm Patrick Fitzgerald Fleck.
And I'm Catherine Prince.
This month we're talking about the first volume of Garth Ennis, John McCrea, and Co.'s Hitman, which, in case you need a refresher, Hitman, A Rage in Arkham, is our introduction to one Tommy Monaghan, a Gotham-based hitman with a heart of gold. But when Tommy's hired to assassinate the Joker, will he get in over his head? Stay tuned to find out.
We fight a Nazi demon. Who knows?
So, Kat, welcome back. We got through the intro after about 3 takes and 2 digressions.
Hey, Kat.
How's things?
Good to be here.
Good to have you.
But Kat, I'm glad to have you back to discuss this series that you really like, and is somehow one of 3 DC Comics series that you like.
There are 3 of them, are there? So you keep better track than I do.
So I put in the intro like roughly 3, because I know there are 2, and I feel like I must be forgetting one.
I would say Hitman, The Secret Six,
hmm
and Deadpool is not a DC title, is it?
No.
Then I cannot think of a third one.
Have you read a Deadpool comic?
Oh, just that little
Oh, the Choose Your Own
4-part.
Adventure one. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that was good. No, you could count Sandman, but probably shouldn't. I just put
Yeah.
roughly 3 because I thought maybe there was one I forgot about. Hitman and Secret Six sounds correct.
Well, I don't know if any of this is relevant, but yeah, I don't tend to like a lot of the mainstream comics, just not really my thing, the superhero stuff, but I do really like Hitman. I think partly because it takes a step back from all that, though there are still superheroes.
Yes. Some overwritten at times superheroes.
I think they're perfectly adequately written. Although, so I guess, Pat, you experienced this a little bit differently than Matt and I did since we started with just Hitman #1 and did not read the supplemental materials until last week. Whereas I guess in the actual trade, it starts with one from 1993, which was Demon Chronicles or something, which is not available online on its own, and one that's part of a Batman trade about some sort of plague that is exactly the sort of comic that I try to avoid, where it's got a superhero cradling a dead body, looking angsty on the cover. But
I did text Pat and say that that issue of the Batman Chronicles has the most anti-Catherine Prince comic cover of any cover in the
yeah, it's just
world.
like that sort of thing, and the string of pearls falling in slow motion, like things that are really overdone like that are kind of like turn-offs for me. Um, but that was the one that was available online, so we did want to give one of them a try, and read that one. But yeah, so I guess did you like it?
Yeah, I think I've read the Nazi demon part of it before. Pretty sure I've read the single issues that you guys
Okay.
Nazis?
had
Huh.
laying about.
Yeah, the demon is 5 Nazis.
Oh, yes, that's
He's got a
right.
swastika on his
I
forehead.
forgot about that somehow. No, you're right. He is 5 Nazis.
Oh yeah, I probably did have those
Yep.
single issues on the bookshelf when we were in Madison, actually. I think I did, so that makes
Yep.
sense.
I'm not lying. This is
Hard
true.
to remember, like, having moved around so much in the last 5 to 6 years, like, what comics I've had with me at what time, because it's always been, like, some smattering and not the whole collection, so
Yeah, no, this is a very Garth Ennis comic. You can certainly feel his influence
but
on
not the
this.
most
And
Garth
it's
Ennis
fun.
comic,
No,
which
no,
I
no.
think
Not
is why
the,
it's
Let me
actually
fix it.
my favorite Garth Ennis comic.
oh,
You think he reined it in a little bit enough, or at least enough?
Yeah, so, like, I'd kinda talked before, like, how I feel like the superheroes, not so much in this one, in the Batman Chronicles issue, very much so, but in the actual Hitman issues, not as much. Like, Batman's overwritten as, like, kind of a overdramatic drag, which totally makes sense. It,
Yeah.
like, is definitely a valid take on the character, but, like, at the same time, hashtag not my Batman. So, and I think that sort of plants the seeds for some of the stuff that you end up finding in The Boys, which I think
how
Cat enjoys.
dare you? That is
Cat enjoys
almost
much.
word for word what I said about this comic.
Cat enjoys The Boys much more than I do, so I think she likes more of the like the piss takes on the DC Comics superheroes that show up in Hitman, and I am not as much about them. So,
Surprise, surprise.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like anti, but I mean, it's a soap opera where people in tights punch each other. Um, I guess it's kind of like, popcorn if you're liking it to food or something. And it's like it exists, but it's no hamburger. That's a bad analogy. Anyway, it's just not really my thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with your definition. I disagree with the amount of value I find in the thing you described. But yeah, it is a really Garth Ennis comic. And I would say like in the ways that I like Garth Ennis comics, where it's focused on like everyman and relationships between characters and really good dialogue. I think we'll probably pull out bits of dialogue that we liked as we go through this because I pulled out at least a few. Um, so yeah, like I think that's kind of what makes it my favorite Garth Ennis comic, and plus it's like dicking around in the DC universe in a way that I think doesn't break the toys, but also has fun with them, and I really like that too. So
Yeah, I don't know how common that is with other DC comics if it's not focusing on the people who are, fighting whatever big bad of the day is, but it is kind of cool that it runs parallel to all that stuff, but then it focuses on the average Joe instead of the main superheroes.
yeah, I really enjoyed the poker scene between the four hitmen, and also like in that scene them talking about the Justice Club and like how much preparation H they think the old Flash uses, like stuff like that. Because that's the sort of stuff that people would be talking about in the DC universe,
Oh,
right?
yeah, what is that? Anti-chafing cream?
Yeah, I believe so.
Mm.
Yeah, just like fun stuff like that, which I think some series get to play with, but like not definitely not as much. A lot of it is more straightforward comic book superhero soap opera bullshit for sure. So it's really nice when something like this comes along and has a different take on it. So Pat, did the trade start with the Demon Annual #2 issue?
Yeah, Etrigan
Okay.
and the parasites, which what the heck?
Okay. That's the one we didn't read, so you'll have to fill us in on that one.
It's like the origin of Tommy's powers,
Okay.
and it's very bizarre.
Do you guys want to hear about Bloodlines?
Bloodlines, Voss's Bloodlines.
So Bloodlines is the like company-wide event that the Demon Annual #2 was part of,
Oh, okay.
in which like basically every single hero had an annual. Some books still do this. They used to do them a lot more frequently, where like every book would put out an annual every year, and the annual would be like sometimes part of a larger story. So the larger story for 1993, I think that was Bloodlines, and it was a bunch of alien parasites that came to Earth and like sucked people's spinal fluids, and sometimes it didn't entirely take, and the people became superheroes.
Yeah, not a fan
Yeah, it's pretty
personally.
gross from what I've read.
I mean, grossness is fine. They're very weird. The design of I wouldn't call them parasites. Like, are they just parasites because they suck the spinal fluids out of people? Is that why they're parasites?
So
I'm
like
gonna
from
defer to
a
the
from a
biologist.
biologist's perspective, a parasite is something that does not give any benefit to the host, but it doesn't kill the host, at least outright right away. Like
They're giant, looks like maybe mechanized
it looks
dragon
like
looking
Alf and the
things.
Predator had a baby. Yeah, but
Yeah, like one is a pink dragon with like a mohawk down its back. These things are very weird looking, and I wouldn't call them parasites.
yes, a parasite eats its prey while it's alive, and a predator kills it first. Generally, is one way to look at it. So, um, given that it seems like people die right away in a gruesome fashion, I would
All right,
call it a predator.
I've got the Wikipedia thing up. I'm gonna read you what Wikipedia says. I don't know whether I agree with it or not. The
A
bite of the
parasite or about the comic?
the comic.
Okay.
The
About the
bite of the
comic?
yeah.
Oh, we're just deferring to Wikipedia for our opinions of the comic now. Hmm.
I haven't read a
Well,
lot
the
of blood.
first part of it.
I haven't read a lot of
I
Bloodlines
didn't
because
read this.
I think we all know Bloodlines wasn't very good. We'll probably talk about the fact that like there are like two characters from Bloodlines that like make it past like 1994, and
Who is
Hitman is
it and
one of the
what's his
two.
name? Oh,
Yeah.
anyway.
Oh yes, the bite of the bloodline's parasites was administered to the back of the neck by a mouth within a mouth. This bite is
Ew.
intended to remove the spinal fluid for sustenance. This usually killed the victim for food, but occasionally awakened superhero human powers in the recipient. This was also the means by which the creatures could reproduce.
What the fuck?
You know, so when it's the 1990s and you're killing off Superman and you're replacing Batman with a new guy and make a bunch of new characters, you're like, well, what's the best way that the audience would be receptive to these characters? How about if they were created by their spinal fluid getting sucked out of them by alien parasites?
Well, it's obviously they had just watched Alien and they're like, okay, well, this is pretty cool. Like, how do we incorporate that?
Oh, is that the year Alien came out?
I mean, mouth within a
1997.
mouth?
Furious Googling.
No, that Alien came out in 1979. I guess they could have been inspired.
I mean, they could just
They have to be.
be riffing on it for sure. Like, they kind of look
Okay.
exomorphy in this cover I'm looking at.
The Predator was released in 1987, and Alf was released in 1986. So it could be any number of
Could
things.
be a combination of all three. But yeah, it was during this period where like DC was basically taking shots at making a bunch of new characters and like shaking things up. Mentioned like the death of Superman was there. It's when Bruce Wayne had his back broken by Bane. Somewhere in there is
Yeah.
when Hal Jordan gets kicked off and Kyle Rayner comes in.
Oh,
So I
I
think
love Kyle. The Labrador retriever of superheroes.
I kind of wish we'd read the Hitman arc with Kyle so that we could yell about Kyle Rayner, but neither here nor there. So yeah, I think Bloodlines was kind of them taking a stab at making new characters, but I think they did so in a really weird way where they set themselves up to not be as successful as they maybe could have been. But the annuals do that all the time anyways too. Like Bloodlines is one of many times they've tried to do that in these annual events. So Bloodlines, don't read it. Not necessary.
Not great.
So yeah, the rest of that the demon issue was fine. Was it good?
Etrigan, I can only handle so much, and he's in it a lot. So
Mm.
I like him. Like I like the idea of Etrigan, but like reading his rhyming, it gets to you after a while.
Oh, but it's his whole deal, Pat.
No, I know.
Some people just don't like poetry, I guess.
Well, partially, Ennis uses pop culture references like crazy in these first few issues, and it does not work for me. Like he references Roseanne. Like why?
No.
That timeless sitcom.
Oh, it is kind of, I mean, y'all know what he's talking about. 50 years from now, maybe not, but
Right? It was weird. And it was Etrigan who was referencing. It was like, what the? This demon is watching all these sitcoms?
Etrigan's watching
Uh,
Roseanne. No, he's not.
think
I
of it
kinda
as a
wanna-
period piece.
I kind of want to go back and read that Garth Ennis the Demon series at some point, but I also don't know if I care at the same time. And this is pushing me more towards the I don't know if I care section, I guess.
I wasn't the biggest
Yeah.
fan of Jason Blood.
Yeah,
If he's the
well,
protagonist. He seems kind of like, just like Batman, a little too overly, or might be caricaturized a little bit because it's in Hitman, though.
yeah, I wonder if he's different in the actual Demon series. Although Jason Blood's always kind of a stick in the mud, regardless of Garth Ennis over dramatizing.
You almost made an Etrigan rhyme there.
Oh, so close.
Jason Blood, stick in the mud.
Well, Patrick, if you decide to read this on later, there's a decent chunk where Etrigan is in it and he doesn't rhyme. So,
Is
yes,
that possible? I
it
don't think he was
is.
able to speak without rhyming.
I understand it as a mark of hell royalty, so that if you are demoted, you no longer speak in rhyme, kind of like you would use a sir title if you got to be a certain point in like the British hierarchy.
At Prince coming in with the deep cuts about how the hierarchy of DC Comics hell works. What up?
Oh, is that how DC Comics hell works? I'm only familiar with the regular one.
With real hell.
Ew.
But yeah, that's kind of too bad. Like, so the the first issue, I think, actually does a really, really well written and subtle job of including a backstory and not doing it with flashbacks or at the expense of the current story that you're building. It just is worked into a conversation while he's hitting on a lady. I thought that was just like one of the best done "this is my backstories" that I've
Yeah,
seen.
thinking about it today, and it's very into the Spider-Verse actually, and it's like, hey, here's what you need to know, but like nothing else, and we're gonna go from there.
Yeah, the first issue he says how he picked up his superpowers. And it's too insane to go into right now. And having just read how he got his superpowers, like, you're right, Tommy. It is
You
too
are
insane to go into
correct.
right now.
Yeah, even that very first page of Hitman where it's just him like shooting the guy in the head, and he's like, "My name's Tommy Monaghan. I'm a hitman. I kill people for money. It's a living." Like that's all you need to know really before
You
the
have
story
that
starts.
memorized. That's not in front of you.
I read it 3 times in the last week.
Lord.
Your husband's a
Earlier
nerd. I'm
today.
sorry, Kat.
What? I never
I'm
knew.
sorry.
Oh my God, I need some time
Come
to
to the
come to
light.
terms with this.
Yeah.
Take as
Um,
much time as you need. We'll wait.
so one of the cool things about this is that there are a lot of different ways in which you can experience a comic. So, like, you can collect it in a trade, which I suppose is the point of this podcast, but you can also do it single issue by single issue, and you can do it in the original or you can read it online. So the way that Matt and I have it is he collected all of these single issues from the 90s at conventions. So I really liked having, I mean, I just like reading paper copies of things instead of digital copies to begin with. But oh my God, it is so fun looking at all these CDs that they're advertising in here. And I've been listening to them as I come across them. It's, yeah, it's just a different experience, I guess.
Got some Sam Goody ads up in here.
Yeah.
What else we got? We got an ad for a Lord of the Rings collectible card game from before the movies came out, so the art's all weird.
Sequel to The Crow.
Yep,
Hmm.
sequel to the Crow Pet. But yeah, and then in addition to that, the one thing I always really like looking at going through old single issues instead of trades is the letters columns too. Like I really enjoy reading letters columns and especially like old letters columns. So that was kind of a treat to get to read too. But Pat, you got none of that. I'm sorry. Sorry for your loss.
I mean, okay with that. I'll take not having to read or have ad breaks.
There weren't any egregious ones in this one, though I do have a blog post in me at some point about like how ad placement can really screw up some single issue comic books.
Yep. It's happened.
I actually read the entire 60 issue run in reading these first three. I just kept going, and it never seemed particularly egregious. I liked the ads all the way through. I thought they were lots of fun. Even the Batman and Robin ads.
There's an ad for watching Batman Forever on pay-per-view in the first or second
Oh
issue. I think the
yeah.
second issue is like pay-per-view. Yeah, that's a thing. I guess now I would
Yep.
just like qualify that as renting a movie on YouTube. But yeah, this was I guess I'm gonna do like a slight deep dive into collecting the series quick because it's one of
A slight
my
deep dive.
I don't
Commitment.
know,
Light.
a medium
Dip a
dive.
toe.
I'm gonna do a
Medium
medium
dive.
level dive.
Skim a little off the top.
But no, like this is a series that I collected in single issues, and it's a really different experience than collecting something in trades and doing it online. I was telling Kat today, like with $60 and 5 mouse clicks, you could have this entire series in like 2 seconds on Comixology, and I think it took me like a year to track everything down, all told, something like that.
What made you
Um,
wanna start collecting them?
I think it was. So first off, this was definitely a book that was in Wizard magazine, like back in the day, as like a oh, we really like this book. And Wizard magazine was kind of the weird tastemakers of comics at that point. It was this magazine that came out and it was like on like grocery store like magazine racks. So if the grocery store didn't have comics, I'd convince my mom to buy me a copy of Wizard magazine that time we were at the grocery store. And they'd have like articles about stuff happening in comics, and they'd have like top 10 lists of artists and writers and single issues and stuff. And then there's a price guide in the back where you flip through and look at like, oh, my comic is worth this much. Um, and Hitman's definitely one that they liked, but I think I ended up actually collecting it because friend of the podcast and frequent guest host Cal Smith um, recommended it because he's a very big Garth Ennis fan and he knows that I enjoy DC Universe bullshit, and this is a good combination of those two things. So I think the year I started collecting it was actually the year we came back from Australia at that next Wizard World is when I started putting my run together in
Do you
Chicago.
remember going booth to booth looking for Hitman.
Yep, yeah. And then Kat and I went and actually got an issue of Hitman signed by Garth Ennis that year too, and I sent it to Cal.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I started putting it together there. I know I picked up the Zombie Night and Gotham Aquarium issues from the comic shop in like Geneva, Wisconsin, because I distinctly remember like being really excited about finding those in their back issue long boxes. And there was one really notable issue later on in the run where a thing that I'm not going to spoil happens that like I completely missed out on and we couldn't find it, but we
Yeah,
wanted to finish
huge
reading
plot
it.
point.
Yeah, it's a giant event in the series and like didn't have it, so eventually I picked that one up on eBay. So I pieced this together probably from like at least four different sources, if not more. So it's just like a completely different experience to tracking stuff down in trades, especially when you have holes in your run. So you're like reading issue 24 and then it's like, well, shit, I haven't found 25 and 26 yet, but I'll jump ahead to 27 because I've managed to find that one at a dollar bin. So yeah, I have memories of this series for that reason too.
You got time for that, man? Who's got the time? I mean, come on. If you're gonna read a story, beginning to end, right there in one nice book for you, or
Who
collection of
to the
books.
internet in
I'm trying to.
2008? Hmm.
That's true. Like, it wouldn't have been a thing that existed. And actually, like, I think they had only reprinted a couple volumes of this at this point, at back when I was tracking it down for the first time, because it was before they started just publishing collected editions for everything because they realized there was actually a market for it.
Hmm.
So I don't think even if I had wanted to, I would have been able to find it in trades all the way through from start to finish at that point. So single issues it was, my friend. I think I paid a dollar or less for a lot of the issues because they were in dollar boxes, but I know I paid $5 for the last issue because it was hanging on like a dealer's actual like comics wall. And that's how I
Nice.
found that one. So yeah, it was fun. Yeah, I still really enjoyed this reading through it again. I think my favorite moment in the book has to be the vomiting on Batman moment.
Yep, it's a good one.
What were some of your guys' favorite moments in the book?
Favorite moments?
Yeah, or high
Well,
points, things you want to talk about that you liked.
I guess I I suppose you're trying to lure me into mentioning this, but I do like the fact that he just goes in there. Um, yeah, so like the point of this is he's hired to go into Arkham Asylum to assassinate the Joker, and he
Which
goes
is
in there.
totally gonna work. Not like the Joker's important or anything.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
anyway, he goes in there and he just like shoots the Joker. I mean, it happens to be this Nazi demon pretending to be the Joker, but it's like, okay, well, that was easy. Like, and then later on, the real Joker's like hanging upside down, hogtied, and is like, help, and he shoots him, like, you're not getting me this time. And then, ugh, like, how many people has Batman killed by not just doing that with the Joker, you know? Like, there's that whole scene where they're chasing a demon and he stops everything to help the Joker down after Tommy shoots him. Like, while a literal demon is running around on the loose. That
He's
just
not
seemed a
helping
little,
the Joker down. He's staunching the Joker's bleeding.
yeah, he's like, I don't know, it felt like a little bit of like they're some sort of on again, off again couple, maybe.
It
And
was
that's
it was
why,
definitely Garth Ennis pointing out the ridiculousness of
yeah,
Batman not dealing with the Joker.
and that's maybe why I like this because I totally agree with him on that point.
Yeah, and Tommy totally does too, right? Like Tommy kind of talks about that when he's talking with his friend Pat pre-hit about really not feeling bad about it at all. And like he's just gonna go in there and do it because like he thinks Batman should have done it years ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, okay, so you have ideals, but there is such a thing as following your ideals to an extreme extent. Like, if you're someone who's like, I don't eat meat, okay, that's one thing. But if you're like, I don't eat meat, I have a cat, I'm not going to allow my cat to eat meat, and then it slowly starves to death. I mean, that's a different thing. And I feel like this is sort of like that. I mean, they clearly either have some sort of romantic tension going on, or this Batman's just a moron.
I think traditionally Batman is I don't kill people, although I like grievously wound them. If they succumb to those wounds, whatever.
He just
But I
kills
think
them
it's
with debt.
yeah, hospital bills
It's a
and
comic.
blimps.
It's
Remember
a
the blimps.
comic book universe, my friends, in which real rules do not always apply. But I do get the point for sure. And like The guy with a giant bat on his chest who goes and fights crime by night is probably an extremist of some sort. Yes. I'll buy that one.
So I made a little bullet list of some of the things that I thought were cool about it.
Well, let's talk about him.
Um, yeah, so number one, I do think of this as, I know it sounds a bit haughty to call it a period piece, but really, I mean, the entire run is in the 90s and it just epitomizes the 90s.
Have you seen that
Like,
jacket? It's definitely a period piece.
oh man, that coat. Like, it's on my bucket list to sew that ridiculous coat because I love it. So it's cool because it's a snapshot of that particular era. Yeah, so that's my one thing. And a lot of these pertain to the art. One of the things that I really like about this, and I guess maybe with some of the other Garth Ennis things too, but especially this one, is that the good guys are allowed to be ugly. Like generally, if you're reading a comic, I give the characters a little bit of a side eye, and I'm like, all right, if you took off the costume and you put on a hat so that I couldn't see their hair, do they all look exactly the same but with different colored skin? And if the answer is yes, then that just it's lazy art to me. Like I'm not really interested in watching a bunch of, you know, figures of anatomical perfection run around. Like the six pack is a future character, and that dude is just like really weird looking.
Yeah,
Like
he's ugly as
bandy
heck.
legged, full of gross stains. Like, ugh. Um, Pat has a horrifying mullet. And even Tommy's like, well, I'm not really, the muscle. He's furry and he's got a little bit of punch. I think in these first three, he's a little bit more buff than he ends up being later on. But yeah, I really appreciate it when humans are allowed to look human, with the exception of any of the female characters. Of course, they are still pretty
I was gonna
perfect
say the
looking.
female detective looks pretty comic booky.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah, where
running into
she's
Arkham
like,
in
I'm
heels.
in heels and what appears to be some sort of leather corset thing. Hmm.
Yeah, and I think you pointed out in your notes that this comic does not even come close to passing the Bechdel test.
Yeah, so the Bechdel test, if you're not familiar with it, is I was Alison Bechdel put this forth as like this is how I can tell if the women are well written. Like, does a woman talk to another woman about something besides a man? And that is it. And unfortunately, none of the female characters pass the Bechdel test. But you know what? It's still like they're hypersexualized. There's some gravity-defying pants later on. Um, it kind of works. I don't hate it. I mean, again,
Pants.
it's from the night. Oh yeah, where it's just like super tight around her butt, but then it's got like 3 inch gap around her like ripped abs. So it just looks like they're gonna fall down at any second, but they're also form-fitting.
You could do that with just like a really tight belt, right?
No, because the belt it gap around the waist.
Yeah, I don't.
Like, I don't know, they stay up by magic, I guess. But anyway, yeah, so I mean, everyone's a little bit caricaturized, but I think it's still feminist in the right ways. Like, Tommy makes a point of, like, he totally objectifies women, sure, but like, he doesn't call them bitches, and he's not, he doesn't disrespect them to their faces. Um, yeah, at least for me, when a guy will call a woman a bitch, like, that's a huge tell for me that he's probably a douchebag.
Well, he doesn't use his telepathy to like manipulate them into being with him. Like in this one, he meets with the one.
Yeah.
Well, this one, I don't know what he does in the future.
Sort of, yeah.
No, I mean, like, does read her mind. Does like learn that she likes Indian food.
I
Does
mean,
They went
wouldn't
maybe?
to
you?
a place. I mean, all he had to do is ask her what her favorite food was. Like,
Yeah, it's
But
true.
it's
it's
not
too
like
forward. You've got to finesse it just right. It's better to
I
come
mean,
off as like, oh, this guy likes my favorite food.
it's also not as cool as just like, wow, he picked my favorite food out of nowhere. He's perfect for me.
that's pretty light manipulation as opposed to like
Yes, absolutely it
Benign.
is. Yeah, and at the same time, I really like that page. I think it's like near the beginning of issue 2 where Teagle is introduced for the first time actually, and she basically like talks down Batman because I think that's a good introduction to her, and like she's a character who can force Batman to say please, and just by like being badass. So I like that page a lot. But yeah, I think jumping on your point about the people getting to be real people, not only do they look like real people, but as we talked about before, they have, I don't know, like personalities and quirks and real world problems that I think are lacking in a lot of DC comics, especially, right? Like I come back again to that that poker scene where they were all hanging out at the beginning, and I just noticed on my reread today actually that on Pat's door in one of the scenes where Tommy shows up, I think it's when he's coming back in handcuffs. The inside of his door has a sign that says, "Did you remember to shower? Did you remember to change your underwear?" Just so gross, but like they're definitely not idealized characters. They're much more actually like Marvel or Image Comics characters than DC Comics characters, which I think is part of why it works, is because you throw them into the DC universe and see what happens. Pat, did you have any moments that you liked that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I did like the one joke they threw in with the 5 Nazi demon dude, where he first shows up and surprises Tommy, and he says, "Where the hell did you come from? Or where in hell did you come from?"
Ah,
And the demon responds back, "Around the middle." It's like, oh, little demon humor for you.
I totally missed that. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, that's in there. I guess if we're on the cool dialogue train, I had pulled out like um the moment where Tommy's looking at that creepy picture of the Joker. John McCrea does creepy really well in this opening arc for sure. Like his Two-Face is really creepy, his Joker's really creepy. I like that. I love that Batman cape that's like really scraggly and like kind of like
Battered.
I think
Yeah.
Kat, you
It
had
has
said like
tentacles. It looks like
yeah.
octopus tentacles.
um but yeah, so Tommy's looking at that picture of the Joker and the guy's like, "Hey, do you want it?" And he's like, "Gee, maybe I should. I might forget what the guy looks like."
Who's the dude with like either stitches or hatch marks all over him?
Oh, that is Mr.
Oh yeah,
Zaz.
Mr. Zaz.
I feel like I should know who that is.
Who probably
He's
most
got a hash mark for every guy he kills. He keeps a tally.
yeah, who probably like most popularly at this point was in that Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey movie, I believe.
Was he?
I have not seen.
Yeah.
Oh, he was in the latest Batman game.
Oh yeah, that's right, in the Telltale game, correct?
Oh no, he was in the first one. Never mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Batman Choose Your Own Adventure game.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh.
But yeah, he's actually from right around a little bit earlier than that time, which is probably why he pops up. So what
It
we
was
get
a
Zaz.
cool little tour of Arkham. I liked where he just went through and was like, "Well, I'm just gonna make a whole bunch of hits as I go down
That
this
page where he's
hallway."
just walking through Arkham, like putting
Sticking a
bullets in
gun
people,
through
is
the
just
bars.
hilarious. Just like, hey, are you Mad Dog whoever?
Who's
Yeah.
asking?
Pop. Just like God, like that. You know what is a good commentary on this on Batman comics? The fact that he gets to just like pop into Arkham and waltz through there with a gun, and like that's not totally not out of place at all. That's a thing that could happen in a normal ass Batman comic.
Well, Arkham security is notoriously bad, so what are you
It's
gonna do?
very bad. The Mad Hatter never recovered.
Get a doctor. Please get a doctor.
Yeah, I think McCrea's Two-Face might actually be my favorite drawing of his, like the Arkham Rogues. He gets to draw that one panel where Two-Face shows up. He's really creepy looking in, very somber. That's about the time that Tommy says one of my other favorite lines too, which is, "Do I feel bad about this? Do you feel bad when you flush the toilet?" So he certainly does not is not shying away from letting the Arkham inmates have it.
Yeah, and then there's the Batman cloak with its tentacles.
Yep. Kat, did we finish running down your list of cool stuff you wanted to talk about?
Let me see. Um, well, I would say we didn't touch upon my favorite thing about Hitman.
Okay.
Um, so the very best thing about Hitman for me, and especially as a DC comic, I feel like this is rather rare, is that it allows things to end. Like Hitman tells its whole story in 60 issues and then it's done. So what you get is a distilled plot and it doesn't need gimmicks to keep itself going as it's passed on to new writers over and over and over again. Um, Even life is allowed to end. So there's no Lazarus pits, no magic spells. You can be pretty sure that if you die in a Hitman comic, you will stay dead. And
Well, didn't he
really,
technically die in this one, Catherine?
no, he was gravely injured, and then he's like, "Yo, fix this." And the Mauser was like, "Okay."
Okay, so you like hand waving when it's to your things, but not when it's
He
other
didn't die. He was
things.
standing there, wasn't he?
Yeah,
He
he
said,
was.
this is me bleeding out." It was definitely him saying, "Okay, I'm dead." And then a Nazi demon fixed him.
Yeah, he didn't
So,
actually die.
all right.
The
He was
strong
Okay.
standing over
distinction,
him with
Pat.
a gun.
I see. Yeah, all right.
Yeah. No, I mean like, with the
I know what
inevitably
you're
it seems
saying.
like in these
Yeah,
things they'll die and then they'll be like, "Well, that was dramatic. It's time to bring them back." Like how many times has Batman or the Martian Manhunter died? But like if you only die once and it's forever, that makes your character's life mean something. So maybe that's part of the reason that a lot of those mainstream comics don't really do it for me is that like it feels gimmicky. Like every plot point that happens is just like, yeah, and they'll ride off into the sunset eventually. You just have to wait it out. But with Hitman, like it's kind of more like Game of Thrones. You really don't know who's gonna die or live or what's gonna happen.
sure.
But I will say in these first three, none of the main characters die, so you don't really get a taste of that here. As you shouldn't. It's kind of nice that they don't.
But there is a lot of setup for what the book is going to become, which the book is not like not so much Tommy goes on profile missions to kill existing DC villains. It's much more of like a Tommy and his crew hang out and do jobs, and like you see what the perspective of this guy living in this place would be, I guess, more so than it's a high concept book. It's much more of a hangout buddies book than a plot driven book. It's very character driven, I guess.
Absolutely plot driven.
Okay, how so?
Well, I guess you'd have to look at the overarching, 60 issues.
I mean, there definitely is like it is one coherent story and it's a very good story throughout,
Oh,
but I
I
think
see what
the
you're saying, where the character development takes the front seat in the plot development. Like it's not sacrificed, but it's more subtle.
yeah, exactly. It's like it's much more about the people in the book than about the actions that take place in the book, which I think is what you were saying kind of you don't like as much about superhero comics is they're very like much more about will Robin die tomorrow
Yeah, they're
than
pretty formulaic.
yeah, and cyclical too, for sure. We do never actually get to see Tommy square off against the Joker though, which is kind of a
Yeah,
bummer.
we do.
I mean, like sort of. I mean, he pops a bullet
He
into the
won that
Joker's
one.
shoulder. I was thinking about that page near the end, which is another page I really like, where basically everyone who Tommy's come in contact with throughout the series is like, "I'm gonna get that
I'm gonna
guy."
get that Tommy.
He never does actually get that rematch against the Joker, which I think would have been really interesting. I think it
I
was a
don't
letter.
want a rematch.
Oh, it would have been fun though.
Eh, I think it's better that they don't actually.
It probably is because again, Hitman's a series that's much more interested in doing stuff with lasting consequences, and when you put the Joker in a story, you can't really do anything that's gonna last because
Well, he's a B character. A B character doesn't square off against an A character. Their paths just intersect a little bit.
well, I did in this one. You got Batman and the Joker in this one.
Yeah, but I mean, they were doing their own things, and he just kind of popped into their story, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Batman shows up in a lot of characters' first stories, turns out. Because putting Batman on the cover of your comic book with really big hands will sell it.
You got to reassure people that this is still DC. Um, does Tommy ever go up against any other DC heroes within Batman, like Gotham? Does he get out
Yeah,
of Gotham?
he goes up sort of against Kyle Rayner a
Okay.
little bit. I feel like a lot of them, he meets them. It's like the case of misunderstanding, and then they end up teaming up. So that one, and I think Catwoman's probably the other one.
Yeah, and there's the very good Superman issue, which is the one
He
that got
doesn't
signed
really,
for
he just
Challenge
runs
That.
into him and they talk. That's not really him,
Yeah, they
going
don't
up
fight, but
against him.
like it's probably one of my favorite issues of the run though, actually. It's just like Tommy and Superman talking on a rooftop. Which again I think says a lot about the strength of the characters versus it being a character first book versus a plot first book. Like most of that book is just Tommy and Superman talking.
The stuff that Tommy usually goes up against is like bureaucrats who are crooked or, people with family problems that need some help getting it straightened out, that sort of thing, which I think is a lot more relatable than whatever giant starfish has come to enslave
Although
the human race.
Don't you dare. Starro's the best.
I'm pretty sure earlier this week you were just like raving about Hitman versus dinosaurs. So
Oh yeah, that one was wonderful. There's a later one where they're frequently hired by a facility called Engine Peak, which has bad security and questionable scientific experiments. And there's one where they go back in time um, accidentally and there's dinosaurs. But I thought that was pretty well done. Again, he doesn't really go up against them. He's just like, these dinosaurs are rad. I'm not going to shoot this dinosaur.
Just such a Tommy take on that situation. Yeah, I guess did you guys have any other bits of the main story you want to talk about? Otherwise, we can maybe briefly discuss the Batman Chronicles story.
Yeah, I guess before we go there, talking about the demon lords of guns,
Oh, yeah.
the Arcanon or whatever they're called.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was my favorite line of dialogue where he's like, say the Arcanon stuck.
And they like blast him all the way from hell when he
Yeah.
says it. No, they're the first scene you see them. I know people complain about this in like films and stuff, but there's no like little on the 10th level of hell or something like that. I didn't know what I was looking at
Oh, like where
when they
you
were
were?
first. It's a weird gun-shaped like building in a very strange place. I didn't catch that they were lords of hell until like a
Oh,
while after that.
I didn't catch that it's a gun-shaped building until you said that.
Yeah, there's like a giant bullet.
I think it's got
Neat.
other guns around it too.
It's a gun
It's
made
it's
of
it's a
guns.
gun made of gun. Yeah.
Ah, yes.
Mhm.
Of course. As you do.
And I was thinking about this because they said that they came into existence the first moment that a gun was created. Guns were created in China. You would think that there would be like it'd be cool if they were like Chinese inspired.
I mean,
But
they're bullet-riddled corpses. They very well could be.
I don't know, just like some like nod to the fact that the Chinese invented gunpowder.
Oh, you mean like include some sort of cultural element in their design?
Something like that.
Ah, yeah, that would have
Like
been
a
cool.
Chinese demon or something would be cool. But I mean, the fact that, yeah, they're just riddled corpses that float.
They're gross.
It's a choice. It's a very Garth Ennis choice.
The glowy effect they're always surrounded by is a very like 90s comics VFX effect, which
Well, it gives them
Yeah.
away as being superhuman. I mean, they're also talking and should be dead, so there's that
oh
too.
yeah, it's just like that and the I think the smoke in Noonan's bar that's kind of just like a Photoshop layer, I think like an early Photoshop layer or something like makes it again a very 90s period piece to me of
Oh
like,
yeah, can
oh
we talk
yeah.
about that?
Yeah.
The whole like, I don't know when the whole say no to tobacco thing started,
Oh,
but
the
it
constant smoking.
is ridiculous. I think there's maybe a 6-page run in this entire 60 issue series in which like in a row that where Tommy's not holding a cigarette. It's just bleh. It's ridiculous how much he smokes.
I mean, I think that's very much a Garth Ennis man's man main character trope too.
Yeah.
He pokes fun at it later with who's that British guy that isn't Jason Blood but likes demons and stuff. He's like drawn as they're just mentioning him and he's in like a collage and he's just got like 4 cigarettes that he's smoking at once.
Oh, Constantine.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was gonna say it's Constantine.
But it's just like, man, this guy would be dead of all the lung cancer,
That's when you make a deal with the three lords of hell for your soul, and they can't collect.
I guess. Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
that's the only thing that I'm just like, ugh, about, but otherwise.
can't remember. I know Marvel made a big deal out of it when they like outlawed cigarettes being shown in their comics, basically. I can't remember if DC like ever had a hard line where they were like, nope, from now on, no, or
Well,
not.
if they
But
did, it was after 2001 because that's when this ends.
yeah.
Isn't that a very strange thing to like? That's a strange line to draw in a comic book where like he's blowing people away constantly. There's gore splashes on every page, but oh my god, he just inhaled tobacco.
Yeah, it does seem like it's getting a little overly censored. And I feel like that would make me be like, yeah, Tommy, smoke, show those bureaucrats what you're doing.
Well, the Marvel thing, if that's what you're referring to, Pat, was like not so much it was more of like a these books are being sold to children thing, and like you shouldn't sell Hitman to children. So I don't think anyone
But
would
this
take the
was
piss out.
mainstream DC, wasn't it? It's not.
That's true.
It's not
Like
Vertigo, right?
it would have been on a shelf like right next to like
Oh, there's
Superman, Green Lantern, etc.
there's a
Yeah.
panel later where someone just goes on like a crazy swearing rant and they like black out all the swears with an asterisk and they're like, not even if this was Vertigo.
Yeah, which is interesting because Garth was writing like I think he was writing Preacher at the same time as this, so it must have been
Okay.
interesting for him to have to mess around in both imprints at the same time.
I was gonna say this is pretty gory for mainstream DC.
A
In a
bit.
fun way. It's
Sure.
not like disgust like I always think about there was this Batman that Matt was reading where there was this wall of skins made of like people and they were
Oh
wet. It
yeah,
was like that's just disgusting and weird, but this is just like fun gory.
that's
And I'm
too
not sure
much.
how you
Yeah,
define the line, but it's like maybe sadism. It's not sadism, it's just people doing weird stuff.
yeah. At the same time as Marvel has like outlawed cigarettes in their comics, I was reading an Uncanny X-Force book this week where like a villain infects Wolverine with like mega cancer and he ends up becoming like super obese and the way he gets over that is just by tearing his own guts out with his claws and
Well,
Cat looked over and like looked at it and was like, "Oh my God, what is going on in that
I guess that was like a tumor, not anyway, bleh. Yeah, sometimes they're just gory for no good
story's
reason.
sake?" Yeah.
I appreciate gore in the right ways, you know.
I think most of the stuff in this book is in service of the story and not gratuitous too. So
I mean, it's Hitman, so what are you
I
gonna
mean,
do?
what you signed up for it, right? Like the very first page is, I think, again, tells you a lot of what you're gonna get. Like you get those captions that say, "Hey, this is who I am and what I do," and you get him blowing a guy's brains out. And if that book is not for you, you can put it right back down.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Yep. Yep.
what I'm curious about is, Patrick, do you have any interest in reading the rest of the run?
Sure. Why not? I'm
So,
not gonna like. It's not like it's
middling.
not this. It's not a story that grabs me. But if I had them in front of me, I would read them.
Well, you did at one point, apparently.
True.
Yeah.
And I did read past this. I don't remember how far I got.
Yeah, this is a tricky one for a trade. Like, I mean, the first three is kind of like their intro, and there are some continuity errors that get ironed out later as, you know, and the writing and art kind of gets into its elements. Like Ringo is described as having ice blue eyes. He's Chinese, and no, he doesn't. Tommy's a little skeezy in these, and he gets a lot less skeezy as it goes on, although not entirely unskeezy because he's Tommy. Yeah, that stuff gets ironed out. So it's I guess one of those things where if it doesn't grab you on the first one, it's worth the second one.
I kind
Because
of
the second
wish.
one's things where that's where it goes down. And they don't even introduce his like his oh what's his partner in this one.
Yeah,
Nat
his
the Hat.
best friend from another city.
I feel like we're running into the same thing we've run into before, where like the main, as you were saying, the main plot of this isn't really established quite yet.
Yeah, I
Like
Well,
the
think
overarching
you.
story.
I guess the main plot is just like I'm a hitman. I do random jobs, and that is what the plot is the entire way through. It's just like the different jobs, you know, they kind of pile on each other and feed off of each other in terms of the stuff you learn about the characters.
Yeah, but I think like much more as it goes, it's about the stuff that happens in like in that bar scene at Noonan's than it is about Shadow Force showing up with terrible code names, like
Oh,
and just
that's
like
hilarious.
that was hilarious. It's a very Garth move to just have like 90s
Ready.
image whatever people show up and be
Yeah,
like,
checking
"I'm
in with everyone.
Cockatoo." It's
Are you ready?
very much Garth Ennis of the boys and not Garth Ennis of Hitman, I think,
Yeah.
actually, as it goes on. So
So you've mentioned the boys a few times. I know you usually ask about recommendations after having read this, and like it's been a while since I reread the whole series, and man, you can really see the seeds for the boys in this. It's kind of like almost like he was giving a test run to that idea, and then um yeah, and then it just kind of became its own idea later on where it doesn't, at least I don't think so, intersect with the DC universe. It's just its own thing. And then he's like, all right, now I can really go at these superheroes and build the world up a little bit more. But I kind of like actually that it doesn't go completely off the rails and like turn them into horrible hedonistic monsters. Like I think Hitman's probably my favorite comic from Garth Ennis because it's got that balance. Like I don't love superheroes either, but it also doesn't like completely lampoon them.
oh man, I agree with everything you just said. I know they were trying to like push the boundaries of what they could get away with because Kat, I think I've talked your ear off about this story in the last week, but I got to interview the assistant editor on this book, Pete Tomasi,
Oh, yeah.
when I worked for Multiversity Comics for a little bit, and I got the chance to ask him like one Hitman question because we were talking about Detective Comics for most of the interview. And he was saying that the original art for that wonderful page where like Tommy barfs on Batman had Tommy like
Okay.
barfing on Batman, like you saw like vomit on the bat
Oh, you
symbol and
actually got to
stuff.
see it.
Yeah, and
Nice.
they took that to the DC higher ups and they were like, "No, bro, you can't do that." And Tomasi was like, "Oh, I really wish we'd gotten to do that because I think people would have really loved it, and I think it would have been cool. I think the page that's there is really good too. I think the comedic timing of that beat before Batman just uppercuts him is beautiful, but."
I think it's better that you don't see it, though at the same time, I wonder if that sketch continues to exist and if it's for sale on eBay somewhere as a print.
I mean, who knows? But yeah, so I know at points they were definitely testing what they could get away with, and I think the fact that he was reined in does actually make the book stronger, and is why I like it much more than at The Boys, or some of his other work, and even not focusing on superheroes, like even Preacher. I think by volume 4, I was kind of off of because just like it gets so gross at times.
Yeah.
So I kind of think in a way having this like influence to keep him on like Kat said on rails like within the boundaries of DC universe stuff you can get away with was a really like good force for making this book enjoyable.
Yeah, I couldn't get through Preacher either.
Yeah, I think we sold those before we moved to California actually or
Oh.
donated them. I don't think we owned the 3 or 4 volumes we had cuz it's just like I don't know if I'm going to finish this. So we'll see.
Right,
I'll always
voice.
get back to it later. Pat, do you have any recommendations for people if they like this comic?
Uh, hmm. I mean, Preacher would be the only one that I could really draw to, and I don't know if I would recommend Preacher. So,
Thought maybe you'd go with. I think that Constantine arc you like is a Garth Ennis arc.
I mean, it feels like it. Oh my god, why am I blanking on what that arc is?
It's called Dangerous Habits, I believe.
There we go.
Is
Thank
it
you.
about smoking?
It is about
Yeah,
smoking.
Lord.
it's really good. I like it a lot. And if it is Garth Ennis, which it is, it's like really, really toned down Garth Ennis because
Yeah,
it,
again, I
it
feel like because Constantine's an established character probably with like again guardrails to like keep you in between, even though it's a Vertigo
Mhm.
book, I bet that would be kind of like the thing where the editor on that book was like, all right, well, maybe not that, or oh, hey, have you thought like, as opposed
Yeah.
to the boys, like, I think the X-Men steal shit from a hospital in the boys or the Teen Titans or whatever, like,
X-Men. I mean, that's something interesting too to be said. Like you look at this and it's Garth Ennis and John McCrae, but like the editors are such an important part about what shapes a story, and you can get bad ones that are bad, or you can get really great ones that just stay behind the scenes and fine tune it and keep it on track and make it something amazing. So, major props to the editors of this one because I think that is what happened.
yeah, absolutely.
I would recommend The Boys actually. So I couldn't get into Preacher, but I really like The Boys. I think it's got a little bit more levity that like, yeah, it's gross sometimes and it's a little bit dark, but I think there's enough fun stuff that it makes up for it.
And as much as I'm not about the boys, it does have characters you can connect with in it that are like Garth Ennis characters that lead with their heart, I think, which I think is again my favorite bit about the stuff he writes. So even I would say you can read the boys.
Last issue of that I bought, it had to go into the adult section of the comic store,
Yeah, you did.
like with all the hentai or whatever.
Well, I think I told you
Boys
this.
gets weird, doesn't it? Like I've read some
Yeah.
synopsises of where it goes, and it's a trip.
I haven't
Yeah.
finished it yet, but
There's a
yeah.
so what they do for their like take on event comics, like summer event comics where there's a mini series with like an earth-shattering thing or whatever, is like the superheroes in the boys universe say they're going to do a universe-shattering battle, and instead they all go and have an orgy on an island. And that's what they do with their summer. So like it has it has interesting things in it. It has things in it that I think are less
No,
interesting also.
I think Hitman did directly seg into it because Hitman ended in April 2001. And then when you start The Boys, like there's some stuff in there that's directly referencing like President Bush and 9/11. So I think that's like a 1-2
Hmm.
step.
Hmm. I'll see if I can
Oh,
look that up for the show notes.
whoa, I bet
Maybe.
it is.
I do know the boys got kicked out of DC Comics because DC Comics did not want to publish it after like issue 5. So
That makes sense.
yeah. My recommendation for this one would be kind of leaning the other way from the boys, where the boys is like more of a pastiche of superheroes. I would lean you more into the DC Comics side of things, but still with like very nuanced and interesting anti-heroes. I would recommend to you the other DC Comics series that Cat Prince likes, Secret Six. Is a very good series by Gail Simone and a bunch of good artists, following a group of not quite villains that are not sure if they want to be villains or if they want to be heroes or
The
if they just want.
Suicide Squad.
They're not the Suicide Squad. Very rarely do they die. Yes.
The Secret
Um,
Squad.
yeah. But I know my friend Trevor, who I think will get on the podcast at some point in the future, like Catman is one of his favorite DC Comics characters, and it's largely because of Secret Six. So Secret Six is very good and very compelling. Also has a good Batman guest appearance in the opening arc, in which he eats a burrito. Yeah, I guess unless you guys have anything else that you want to talk about in regards to Hitman before we sign off, I can start
You want to go into your?
doing the old canned outro. We didn't really talk about that Batman
Yeah, I thought you
Chronicles
wanted to
issue.
talk
I was
about the
gonna
Batman
say.
Chronicles.
We skipped past it, you guys. You want to talk about it quick? It's fine. The coloring's not as good.
I Yeah, I would just like my main takeaway from that was like the writing wasn't quite as tight. You could tell it was like a concept that hadn't been completely fleshed out yet. It was still kind of fun, but like, whoa, the colorist, the difference in the colorist just like really hits you. Like it's a totally different color green and huh.
The more I look at it, the more aspects of the coloring grow on me, but it's definitely much flatter than the actual series.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's bad color, but it's just like not at the level of the actual Hitman color.
You do get another creepy John McCrea Batman cape, so there's that at least.
Good. They do more with like negative space, which is interesting.
Yeah, the X-ray vision is kind of cool too in that one. But I was actually the thing I was most curious about for that actually, Pat, was like, did you understand what was going on in that issue at all, or that story?
No, and the fact that I didn't get that there was a plague, like there's a plague in Gotham. It's like, oh, I guess there's a plague in Gotham.
Yeah, see, I really wish like Kat was kind of like hinting at this earlier, but like, man, I would have dropped this Demon Annual 2 issue and this Batman Chronicles issue from this trade, and I would just put the second arc of Hitman in this trade, because then
Yeah, I agree.
you would have really gotten rolling by that point. Like the first arc gives you some of the setup and it gives you the cool shock value, hey, I'm gonna hunt the Joker one, and then the second arc gives you, hey, this is what this series is, and you would be really into it by then. As opposed to you get the Joker arc, which is good, but like it's definitely like an opening. Hey, here's Batman, here's the Joker, here's some of what this series is about, and then you get two random filler issues, which is like
Mhm.
they're fine, but like they're not really necessary to the overall plot of the 60 issue series of Hitman.
So, was there an overarching DC plot that there was a plague in Gotham?
Oh, it was the whole Gotham thing, Pat. Let me tell
Oh,
you.
okay. Because I was confused. I didn't think, was this like biological weapon dude? He wasn't the cause of the plague. He just happened to be there. Like, what are the chances that there's a
Yeah,
plague in
yeah,
Gotham
weird,
and
right?
now there's a biological weapon dude?
So when Night's End and Nightfall, the thing where like Batman had his back broken and then had to recover and then had to come back and be Batman, did really well. They started doing more like interconnected Batman line events, and this was one of those. And basically, there's a plague in Gotham. That's the whole thing. And so Batman and his allies are looking for a cure, and that actually goes like three stories further, basically, to eventually culminate in No Man's Land, where the U.S. like shuts Gotham off from the rest of the world and is like, "Fuck it, deal with yourselves."
Oh.
So like the next four big stories like that are all kind of interconnected, but like, yeah, coming to it now, especially dropping it in the middle of this random Hitman trade, like how are you supposed to connect with this? Or like how are you supposed to know
No,
what's going on?
like I said, I thought like the dude they were hunting was the cause of the plague, but then it wasn't at the end. It was strange. And like it resolves itself very strangely. Like Batman's all against him hurting this guy, and then it's like, no, wait, no, go ahead.
Well, because he's already dead. And also, Batman kicks a gun to a person in the main Hitman story, remember? So Batman's a little loose with that no killing rule in this one. Not for the
Also,
Joker, though.
Not for
he
the
gets
Joker.
a
They're totally an item.
Batman gets a pistol like shoved in his mouth, which I could never ever see Batman allowing someone, like even if he could take it away by ripping it out of his hands with his teeth, it's still very strange to see Batman standing there.
I mean, that's part of the point, though, right? Like, it's supposed to be a good shock value first page. You want to see how that happened.
Sure, sure, yeah. I would agree that I think this would be a better trade if they just dropped the first two stories and just went into the main Hitman story
I think it
from
would
the
only be
get-go.
7 issues still, too. Like, it'd still be a good trade size. You wouldn't have to deal with this overwritten Batman internal monologue in this Batman Chronicles story.
I think it's for the completionists who want to have everything Hitman
I'm not
when
even
they
sure if
collect the
that's all of his
trades.
appearances, though. Like, I think he's in Other the Demon issues, though. I'd have to relook that up. Anyways,
That's what omnibuses are for, not trades. Come on.
yeah, when I talked to Peter Tomasi about that, actually, that was one of the things he was trying to make happen was getting all of Hitman collected in one omnibus. So maybe someday, knock on wood.
There you go.
All right, well, now I think that is going to do it for this month's discussion of Hitman. As always, if you want to get in touch with Pat or myself, you can find us on Twitter as @WattPodcast. You can also email us at waitingonthetrade@gmail.com and read more comics related goodness at mattreadscomics.com. Kat, do you want people to find you online?
No.
Well, I'm really glad that you deigned to be online with us during this.
No,
I always
okay. I yeah, I don't really have any side hustles going right now, and I don't really use social media. I'm a purposeful troglodyte. You can find me at the park, I guess.
I
You guys
will.
do that fun zine you guys put together. You
Oh
should talk about
yeah,
that.
you can find the zine that we made called Extra Crunchy Fun at Matthew's website.
I will put a link to be able to purchase the zine on Gumroad and to take a look at some of the blog posts and other stuff that Kat's contributed to the comics website in the show notes because all the stuff that she contributes to the website is great.
Today's episode was brought to you by Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. Not really though,
It is a
but it
pale
is
ale that I actually
it's
like.
Tommy's beer of choice. So we had to go out and get some.
We did make a specific stop on the way home today just to buy Sierra Nevada. So